a space for consciousness raising, and maybe as a space where practical actions, and also finding new halachic decisions and new sources for halachic decisions from alternative authorities. Our next speaker is Dr. Einat Libel, who is an anthropologist of religion and a historian. She is currently a postdoctoral fellow in the sociology department at Bar-Ilan and a lecturer in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies at Ashkelon Academic College. Her PhD was on the development of liberal, reform, and conservative Judaism in Tel Aviv, and it won the Shergan Award for Outstanding Doctoral Thesis. Her academic interests include cultural dynamics between Israel and the US, urban anthropology, liberal Judaism, and congregational studies. She has presented her work in many prestigious academic conferences and won the American Jewish Archives Fellowship to develop this work in 2017 and 2018. So we're very happy that she's sharing it with us today.
I'm really excited to be here today, and I want to thank Professor Sana, Professor Weiss, Professor Fishbein, and all the others. I'm sorry if I missed someone. I'm going to speak about Jewish women in the reform and conservative settings in Israel, past, present, and personal. Okay. The reform and the conservative movements in Israel were established in the mid-60s and have promoted gender equality ever since. During this presentation, I will focus on active women in reform congregation and in the reform movement, since the reform movement is the most liberal Jewish religious movement in Israel. And I will present the stories of the women who are active in it. Over the years, the composition of the liberal movements in Israel has changed dramatically. Initially, they were founded by American-speaking immigrants, and in time, Israeli-born families and individuals began to take part and even to take up rabbinical positions. My talk is based on an ethnographic fieldwork which I conducted in 2 congregations, Beit Daniel, you can see it in the slideshow, you can say the most well-known Israeli Reform synagogue in Israel. And it resides in Tel Aviv. It was established in 1991 by immigrants from English and German-speaking countries as the Reform movement's hub in the Tel Aviv area. From the very beginning, it functioned as both a synagogue and a community center, offering cultural and educational activities alongside religious services. And I also conducted an ethnographic fieldwork in a very small conservative congregation in Ramat Aviv, which was attended mainly by the people living in the neighborhood. In those congregations, I was especially interested in the role that women played in the life of the congregation. I discovered that in these congregations, the female members were affiliated with different generations, namely the founding generation, the 50 to 70 years old, and the 40-something years old. And I therefore analyzed their stories to uncover the developments in the status of women in this congregation. Now, the status of women in these 2 congregations may reflect the status of women in the general reform and conservative movements in Israel. In addition to the active members, those congregations that I researched attracted women from the larger secular public due to the religious services that they provided. By religious services, I mean bar and bat mitzvah ceremonies and conversion courses and Jewish classes. Throughout my talk, I will be incorporating quotes from both groups of women. And this is a very good friend of mine. This is Bruria Barish, and she represents the Beit Daniel founding women. The older women founders grew up in religious or ultra-Orthodox families. They joined the Reform congregation because they searched for some connection to tradition without being strictly observant. They wanted to provide their children with contemporary Jewish education. And they also emphasized, when I spoke with them, the importance of men and women sitting together, allowing the parents to sit together with their children in a family setting. And most of the founders also spoke especially about the wish to do a tikkun olam, to help the needy, as a motive to joining Beit Daniel and the Reform movement. And Bruya Berish, she is the president of Beit Daniel until those days. She was born in Romania in 1931 and grew up in a Hasidic family of Vishnitz. She was already living in Israel in the early days of the state, and after her studies and all the wars, she gradually stopped being observant and adopted more liberal views. She immigrated to the US where she met her husband, and then they came back to Israel in 1963 and joined the Reform movement to provide their son with a Jewish education. Therefore, they attended Friday night services as a family since he was 2. And another reason for her to join the congregation was her search for tradition. She said, "I realized I was missing the framework, the sense of belonging to a community, to a congregation." She now views Beit Daniel as her extended family. And she said, "Aside from my own loving family, I see the congregation as a family. When I was sick and grieving, I was happy to discover that the congregation to which I belong loves me and cares for me." Another reason for her ongoing activity is her desire to help others. She told me, "The interest I found in people and social work led me to be active in the Reform congregation." And in 1986 till 1991, she was not only the president of the congregation, but the volunteering head of all of the Reform movement in Israel. And also she was well known for her public promotion of the Reform movement, for her insistence to be a full-fledged member in the Tel Aviv Religious Council. Now, a religious council operates under the authority of the state and the chief rabbinate, and they didn't want to sit with Bruya. So she appealed to the court together with the Reform movement a lot of times, and as you can see, there were newspapers that reported on her all along those years. Pertaining to her involvement in the congregation, like in many congregations, also in the Reform congregation, women are volunteering in charity work and preparing food, but Bruya and the other founding members weren't satisfied with just with this female concept of religiosity. For them to take care of others, even besides the congregation, outside the congregation, aligns with the Reform Judaism commitment to pursue Tikkun Olam. Bruya, for example, she told me a lot of times about those years before the first and the second Intifada, where she formed those summer camps for Arab and Jewish youth. And she's really exceptional in all of her involvement till those days for the Reform movement. I would now want to speak about the key active female members who are aged between 50 to 70. Most of them are middle class and they have, of course, academic degrees. They immigrated to Israel from various places around the world, and they are in different stages in the family life cycle. So they have myriad of reasons to join the congregation. I would speak mainly about the joining the congregation because of the family. Judith Conforti, she was born in Israel in 1948. She's a history teacher and she joined the congregation with her husband. The reasons why she joined the congregation is because her son turned bar mitzvah. And she represents a relatively minority, a very small minority of Israeli-born women who have joined the congregations, liberal congregations, because their children had turned bar mitzvah. She said to me, "We came in preparation for our son's bar mitzvah something like 18 years ago. My nephew has attended the bar mitzvah in Beit Daniel, the celebration, and said the entire family was sitting together. I thought we should check it out. And we've been here ever since." By the way, her daughter is also a female rabbi in Beit Daniel. She sometimes officiates in a bar and bat mitzvah. And Judith is also a very good example of a prime example of active women who volunteered in the congregation. Upon her retirement, she founded a social framework for the local elderly population where she teaches about history and Judaism. So you can see that the commitment to Tikkun Olam, it goes like from generation to generation, pertaining to the women who are active in the congregation. And for her and for the other active members, the social activity, the Tikkun Olam, like the social action, you can say, Gemilut Chasadim, to take care of others, it's their expression of Judaism. And also there are active women in their 40s. And these women came to Beit Daniel through a very interesting forum. It was called the Young Forum for adults and students, designed to overcome a young Israel's disinclination to become involved in the Reform congregation. And they forged close ties with each other, and they remained in the congregation even after they became parents and had children. And also, when they were in this young forum, they participated in a lot of protests on behalf of the Reform movement on issues relating to state and religion. They joined the congregation in their 20s and 30s and speak about Judaism that suits the needs of a middle-class secular women in the 21st century and liken Reform Judaism to the internet. They said, "We serve wherever we want," meaning that there is no need to commit to just one single congregation and or to one single expression of one form of Judaism. Each of these women had tried several different social and spiritual religious options before selecting the Reform movement. You can say that their Judaism is the kind of Judaism that suits the needs of women who do not look for commitment. Now, individuals today are committed to so many communities, and educated women whose lives are mobile place greater emphasis on autonomy. The active women in Beit Daniel who joined it at their time when they were 20 and 30 emphasize that although their involvement in Beit Daniel is partial, it is meaningful to them. And they have a very interesting definition of religious identity. They are Reform secular identity, you can say. Some of them define themselves as secular women who are active in the Reform congregation. And Omrit, for example, she's 45, divorced, who works in finances. She said about her Jewish identity, "I am secular. There is no religious aspect to my daily life. I view Judaism as a culture and have a positive affiliation with traditions, with holidays, with customs and rituals." She sometimes goes to the prayers, but to services, and because she's so secular in the eyes of all of her friends, they tend to ask her, "What are you looking for in a Reform congregation? If you just pray from time to time and you said you're so secular." And she told me like that, "People don't understand why a secular person attends synagogue. Obviously, I don't go to pray because I'm searching for a communicating with God. I enjoy the experiences. It lifts my spirit to sing certain songs to a certain tune." And she chose the term Reform as an external label that would help others to understand what is her identity, like to help others even to digest her identity. Although her own perception of her Jewish identity is much more complex. Omrit and women like her combine secularity with Reform Judaism in order to explain how a secular woman can be active and pray from time to time in a Reform congregation. And one of the main, you can say, motives to be active in a Reform congregation is their commitment to social justice. This one was one of the main motives to join the Young Forum and to be identified as secular with the Reform movement. Omrit and other women believed in philanthropy and social justice, and they identified with those values. And this identification allowed them to be identified also as a Reform, instead of just being secular. It means that Beit Daniel provides a lot of avenues and options for these women to express their values, such as tolerance and equality between genders or humans in general. They had not been exposed, it's very important to understand that these women had not been exposed to religious education before they came to Beit Daniel. So for them, you can say, to be active in Tikkun Olam, in social justice, is their way to express their Judaism. And it reminds me a lot from what I've read in Cohen and Eisen book, The Jew Within, about unaffiliated young Americans that sometimes said Judaism for them is also doing volunteering and try to change the society. Now I would like to speak about the religious, you can say, consumers, women who are religious consumers. They celebrated their bar and bat mitzvah for their children in Beit Daniel. They came from the larger metropolitan, you can say. Tel Aviv is like the biggest city in central Israel, so they came from all around the Tel Aviv area. And then Naomi said, at the ceremony in the Reform synagogue, I was impressed by the fact that everyone sat together. Mothers could sit by their sons, by their daughters, instead of hiding upstairs behind curtains or need to move the curtains. I have a son and I want to celebrate with him. It's nice to do it together, it's fun. Revital, this is a very interesting habit in Beit Daniel. You hand the Sefer Torah from generation to generation, from the grandparents and grandmothers to the parents to the children, also including the sisters, of course. So it's very familiar. Also, Revital, her daughter, had a bat mitzvah in Beit Daniel. I have to say, a minority within the larger Israeli society, a minority of young daughters, who are turning 12, are having bat mitzvah, like a religious kind of bat mitzvah. Revital provided the following practical explanations for her choice to celebrate her daughter's bat mitzvah in Beit Daniel. When you want a girl to read from the Torah, you need to find a Reform synagogue, she added. Something new is being introduced into tradition and religion, the reforms. You can see above, this is a picture that was taken during one of the ceremonies in Beit Daniel, and of course a mother that tries to convey to her daughter the importance of gender equality. Parents who choose to celebrate their child's bar and bat mitzvah in Beit Daniel are going through a preparatory course, a preparation course. And only a small percentage of the Israeli mothers had celebrated any kind of bat mitzvah on their own when they were young. And it's important to understand, because they said to me that the preparation course is important to them due to the fact that during this course, for the first time in their life, they were exposed to donning a tefillin, to women who is donning a tefillin. I know it's very common in the US, but in Israel, you hardly ever see it. And Daphne said, pertaining to this issue, it felt good to don tefillin for the first time in my life. I was excited to be in a religious framework that noticed me for the first time, unlike other frameworks that ignores me just because I am a woman. It is a tremendous contribution to the Jewish identity of girls. Her quote implies that for mothers and daughters, it's very meaningful and exciting for the first time ever to take an active part in a ritual that until those days in Israel is considered a male privilege. Moreover, the fact that a woman rabbi, you can see here, had instructed the participants how to don the tefillin rendered the rabbi, the female rabbi, as a role model for the bnot mitzvah and their mothers. I would now want to speak about Rabbi Galia Sadan as a religious and spiritual and congregation leader of Beit Daniel. She is the associate rabbi at Beit Daniel for the past 20 years, ever since she was ordained by the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. She runs the bar and bat mitzvah program and also the conversion school. She's officiating next to Rabbi Meir Azari, and she's the rabbi of 300 families. And Sadan is now the אם של הבית דין שעושה את הגיור. I will say it in English. She is the Chief Justice of the Israeli Reform Movement's Beit Din, of the Conversion Court. And she said, pertaining to gender and about her family's views that shape her ties with the Reform Movement, she said, I would never have started my adventure with the Reform Movement had it not been a gendered equal movement. And she also said that the gender of the rabbi is still very important in many cases, especially when celebrating a bar mitzvah. This is the issue for the parents, not just for the kid. And she said to me in this context that there are parents who come from traditional backgrounds that hold common views, accepting gender segregation in the religious sphere. They come to Beit Daniel because they want to sit by the mother, and the father wants to sit together with the child, but still they want a man rabbi to officiate in the ceremony. So to them, it's extraordinarily, even inconceivable, that a woman rabbi would officiate in the ceremony. And she said, for them, says Sadan, she is like a cow with wings, like an alien. Okay, you can say. Yet, she said, she quoted what Rabbi Meir Azari, he's the senior rabbi of the congregation, told her. And I will read it. The more they see women rabbis, the more they will want them. Once, it's a personal matter. Once they will get to know you, they will want you. They will be happy when you will officiate at the ceremony. They will start to asking for you, and they won't care for what the grandpa says. In Hebrew, we said they won't care if what not just the grandpa, the grandmothers, and all the rest of the family will say. They will stick with the rabbi. And indeed, there have been many cases where families initially requested for male rabbi, but after getting to know Galia, agreed to have her officiate over their son's bar mitzvah. And to conclude, my talk was about active members in liberal movements in Israel versus women who just consume from time to time the religious services offered by a Reform congregation. The founding and the older active members in the congregations, and it doesn't matter if it's a Reform or conservative congregation, they describe their Jewish identity by using just one term, conservative or Reform. In contrast to the 40-something years old who use more terms, combining them in very innovative ways to define their Jewish identity. This difference is an indication, maybe, of the generational gaps, which means that for for women today, they enjoy freedom of forming their own Jewish identities that past generations didn't have or didn't take for themselves. Religious reform and conservative identities are broad and comprehensive. Thus, Israeli liberal congregation can contain different identities within themselves and appeals to women of various generations. And of course, they also offer the women who are active in them a lot of options to volunteer for the rest of society according to their own skills. My conversation with active women members in the congregations revealed that they connect to liberal Judaism through actions. Yeah, not from speaking, but to do. They are tachlis, we say in Hebrew. They are drawn to these congregations as places combining a commitment to social justice with philanthropy, namely tikkun olam. For them, this is, you can say, a very important part of Jewish identity. Now, unlike the members of the female members of the congregation, the women who only came to mark special occasions at Beit Daniel are religious consumers. They come to the congregation because it offers ceremonies that aligns with the secular lifestyle. Their experiences from those life-cycle celebrations strengthen their positive view of liberal Judaism, but they don't say that they are reform or conservative. After they finish to consume the specific religious service that brought them to this congregation, they terminate their contact with the congregation because the religious and identity-related needs of most secular Jews in Israel are met simply by living in the Jewish state. Thank you very much.
I'm Jonathan Sarnai. I direct the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies, and really a pleasure to work with Lisa on this program. My job is to introduce our next two speakers.